Before we begin, I just want to preface this episode by saying that this was recorded in a car on a cell phone over a Zoom call. It was a very spur of the moment episode that we were very grateful to have the opportunity to be able to record. So if you have a little bit of difficulty hearing certain parts, I recommend getting on another platform or device to listen. But thank you, and I hope you enjoy the show.
What's up, Buncombe? It's Abby, and today I am here with a very special guest. We are here with Tom Murry, who is running for seat number 12 on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. How are you doing today, Tom?
Well, thanks for hosting me on this podcast.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you.
Raise a flag of liberty, the land of the free, rejecting tyranny.
So I think the first thing that people want to know, what does a judge do on the Court of Appeals?
So the Court of Appeals is the intermediate level court that reviews cases from the trial level. So there are trials that are held at the district court and superior court level. District court generally handles misdemeanors, but it also handles child custody cases, divorces. Those cases can get appealed to the Court of Appeals. And the superior court is where you have jury trials, felonies, and civil cases over $25,000. So in every trial, somebody wins, somebody loses. And if somebody's unsuccessful at the trial level and they appeal that decision to the next level, that next level is the North Carolina Court of Appeals.
So what made you want to get involved with that?
Well, I think judges are the last line of defense when it comes to protecting our rights enshrined in the Constitution. And as a prosecutor, a state prosecutor, and a state legislator, I have seen the importance of judges when it comes to protecting public safety and upholding law and order in our state. I can tell you the Court of Appeals is the workhorse court of the appellate level. Every year, there's about 1,500 cases that get appealed to the Court of Appeals. On average, a judge on the Court of Appeals will be writing about 100 opinions a year. That's a lot of work. It has a wide impact on the people of the state of North Carolina. But 50% of the cases that get appealed to the Court of Appeals are criminal appeals. And so I've tried jury trials at the criminal trial level. And I think having that jury trial experience coupled with my legislative experience helps me understand the importance of the judiciary and being an effective member of the Court of Appeals when it comes to separation of powers and the independence of the judiciary.
So, you're talking about protecting rights and things that are very important. So, in all of your legal experience, how have you made sure that your decisions have aligned with constitutional values?
Well, at the end of the day, it starts the plain meaning of the Constitution or the plain words that are in a statute that's passed by the General Assembly. And so if you have fidelity to the words, fidelity to the original intent that is contained in our Constitution or in that statute, that's going to help avoid any of these traps that I've seen other judges fall into when they try to essentially legislate from the bench or become some sort of judicial activist, super legislator. And I think there's a real danger with that because that's just not the role that the judiciary plays in our democratic republic. We have three branches of government. We have one branch of government that's responsible for executing the laws. We have one branch of government that is responsible for appropriations and passing new laws. The legislative branch is the policy branch. And then you've got the judicial branch, which helps resolve disputes between the other two branches and interpret the law focused on the original intent of the Constitution and the people as expressed through their General Assembly.
Wow. So, elaborating off of that, why do you think that judges are so important? Why should someone, say 22, my age, who's never voted before, why should we care about who the judges are?
Well, I think a lot of folks across the state of North Carolina are really seeing the impact that the judicial branch has when it comes to public safety. And so public safety is top of mind for a lot of folks. I know I've got young daughters or college age daughters that are just kind of getting out on their own the first time and seeing places that where they feel unsafe. And I think if you draw that line back to the judiciary, that's one of the roles that the judicial branch plays, is to help make sure that people are appropriately punished when they commit criminal offenses, but also balance everybody's constitutional rights when it comes to criminal issues or other issues that the courts are faced with. And I've had direct experience doing that as a prosecutor, working with local law enforcement, making sure that we're focused on things that will benefit the public, keep us all safe, and also balance the rights that we have enshrined in the Constitution.
So what from your experience makes you uniquely qualified to have this seat on the Court of Appeals?
Over the past 23 years, I've had various opportunities to serve the people of the state of North Carolina. When I went to pharmacy school right out of college, and so started practicing pharmacy in local community pharmacies, and had the opportunity to work on various policy issues, which ultimately led me to law school. While I was in law school, I got asked by folks in my neighborhood to run for my local town council. I was 28 years old. We had a 1-year-old. We campaigned hard, pushed her in a stroller with a yard sign on the front, asked people to vote for me, and I was successful in that election. 4 years later, I won re-election to the town council, and then got asked by some of my local members of the General Assembly to run for the state legislature. I ran for the House, served 2 terms in the North Carolina House, where I chaired the Commerce Committee and worked on a host of legislation that helped improve the business climate in our state. After I left the legislature, I got asked by the Chief Justice to come work at the judicial branch in an executive leadership capacity, where we worked on the signature thing we worked on there was juvenile justice reform, to make sure that nonviolent offenders, first-time nonviolent offenders that were juvenile, 16 and 17, were not saddled with a criminal conviction, and that would impact the rest of their life. We were the last state in the country to raise the age of juvenile jurisdiction from 16 to 18. While I was in that role, I deployed to the Middle East. I'm also an Army veteran. I served as a judge advocate in the Army National Guard. And I can tell you, deploying to the Middle East is very much of a life-changing experience for me. And so when I came back from that deployment, I decided to go back into the trenches and started working as a state prosecutor. And that really helped round out my legal experience by having experience both at the top of the judicial branch in an executive capacity, working with the Chief Justice, and at the trial level, working with local law enforcement, clerks, judges, magistrates across the district where I worked. And it really just rounded out that experience. And I think that you sum all that together, and I think I'm extremely qualified to serve on the Court of Appeals. And I'll just foot stomp one more thing. I would be the only healthcare provider on the Court of Appeals. There's a host of issues that the Court of Appeals addresses when it comes to healthcare, whether it's insurance defense, medical malpractice, or workers' compensation. Having that knowledge and experience as a healthcare provider is a real value add to the Court of Appeals.
Wow, you have a very impressive background. First of all, thank you for your service. And second, so do you think that, all of these things that you've done, do you think that this has really made your views of politics concrete, and like the fact that, no matter what, you're going to stand by constitutional values?
Absolutely. And I think, as a soldier, I've taken an oath of office to the Constitution. As a state prosecutor, I took an oath to the Constitution. And I've tried over the course of that career, over the past 23 years, to really hone in on issues that will have the most benefit for the people of the state of North Carolina. And I believe that's a nonpartisan pursuit. And I think that extending that track record, you might say, of really really focusing on important issues that benefit the people in a nonpartisan way. I think it's a logical extension of that career to serve as a judicial, as a member of the Court of Appeals, as a judge, where that's a nonpartisan pursuit. There's not there. Those are most of the cases that you see go to the Court of Appeals have essentially nonpartisan issues that deal with public safety and the business climate in our state. And I think my background and experience, both in the public sector and the private sector, have helped prepare me for that to serve in that capacity on the Court of Appeals.
So I know that you probably have a lot of plans for, your term when you get elected. What, if you could narrow it down, what are the three biggest things that you want to accomplish?
So the Court of Appeals is an error correcting court. It's not a policy court. And so I think focusing on the role that the Court of Appeals plays in our system here in North Carolina is extremely important. So I would put that under the bucket of separation of powers. I think separation of powers is something that I'm very, very passionate about. And tied into that is the independence of the judiciary. And so the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government. We previously talked about the roles that all three branches play, and the independence of the judiciary is something that I'm very passionate about. And then I'd say the last thing is to make sure that we are daily improving access to justice. And there's a couple of things that fall into that. First, making sure folks have adequate representation when they're either faced with a criminal charge, or if they're have an issue related to family law. We want to make sure that there's adequate representation for folks that fall into those categories. And I think encouraging attorneys to either take pro bono cases or sign up to serve as court-appointed attorneys is something I'm very passionate about. And related to that is civics education. When I worked for the Chief Justice, one of the things we really worked hard on was developing a speakers bureau through the North Carolina Judicial Branch, so that judges, clerks, magistrates, assistant district attorneys can sign up. And if there's a civic group that wants someone to come speak on judicial branch issues or the criminal justice system, or just help people understand the judicial branch better, I think that part of that civics education helps when it comes to making sure people are adequately represented and are helping to protect their rights should they ever be found in a case in the court system.
Do you think that civics should be taught more in schools?
I think there's everybody has it. I think it's fourth grade in North Carolina. They get a chance to learn a lot about the government of our state. But I think most folks don't ever come into contact with the court system, and that's probably a good thing. But every year there are about 3 million new cases filed in the judicial branch from every year. Most of those are traffic cases. That's usually the number one way a person comes into contact with the court system is through a traffic case. And so, but there's a whole lot more that the judicial branch does. And I think it's in the best interests for an informed society to understand the court system better. So if they ever find themselves needing to access the court system, they are prepared to do so and have a better understanding before they get to the courthouse versus trying to figure out once they land themselves there.
Yeah. So, the last question I want to ask before we wrap up is, what are you going to do to help us fix Buncombe, or more broadly, Western North Carolina?
Well, I can tell you the people of Western North Carolina have really showed themselves how resilient they are facing the just tremendous challenges post Hurricane Helene. I actually went up to Boone and helped volunteer with with some folks from my church, with Samaritan's Purse, and just kind of get to see it firsthand, face to face. And I think you can really see potential gaps when you have an event like this. You see the best in people, but you also see gaps where maybe folks weren't as prepared at the local government level, and it's almost impossible to prepare for an event like this. But what I saw is people one-on-one, neighbors helping neighbors, and I think that's a tremendous testament to the people of Western North Carolina. But I can tell you, there's a lot of concern that I've heard out of Buncombe County when it comes to public safety, and I think that's one of the roles that the Court of Appeals can play when there are issues that have statewide impact that impacts public safety. I think that's one of the things the Court of Appeals can actually do to help promote public safety is to really focus on the issues at hand when a criminal conviction is appealed to the Court of Appeals, and search to see whether there was reversible error, and if not, then those criminal convictions should be upheld. And I think that has a direct line to public safety across the state, especially Buncombe County.
Great. So is there anything that you'd like to say to your constituents?
There are if I was going to have a kind of final words that I would encourage the folks that listen to this podcast is to finish the ballot. There are 4 statewide judicial races on everybody's ballot in the state of North Carolina. We have a Supreme Court race featuring Judge Jefferson Griffin. Like me, he's an Army veteran. He's served on the Court of Appeals for about 4 years, written over 250 opinions. He's a father of small children. He's got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. He was a state prosecutor and a district court judge before that. And I think he's extremely qualified to serve on the Supreme Court. We also have seat 14, which is Judge Valerie Zachary. She's practiced law with her husband for a long time in Yadkin County. She's actually served on the Court of Appeals for about 9 years, written over 500, almost 600 opinions. She went to Harvard Law School, graduated cum laude, and graduated from Harvard and ended up right back in Yadkin County practicing law. And she's just a tremendous asset on the Court of Appeals currently, one of the most senior judges there. And then on seat 15, we have Judge Chris Freeman. Judge Chris Freeman is a district court judge in Rockingham County. He serves in the Air Force Reserves, just got promoted to major a few weeks ago. Prior to that, he was a state prosecutor in the Rockingham County area for about 10 years. And he's got just a good long legal career, over 18 years practicing law, and is an extremely qualified candidate as well. I would encourage everybody to finish the ballot and make sure they vote for Judge Jefferson Griffin, Judge Valerie Zachary, Judge Chris Freeman, and me. If you want to find out more about me, you can visit jointom.com, and I would be glad to answer any questions if somebody wants to contact me through my website.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to voting for you.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate your diligence on trying to make your area of our state better, and educating folks that might vote, like you said, be voting for the first time, but understanding that there are a whole lot of races on this ballot this cycle, and each one is equally important.